The silent arrival. Tuesday started like any other day across planet Earth. Office workers grabbed their morning coffee, children walked to school, and farmers tended their fields. The sun rose over bustling cities and quiet villages alike, casting long shadows that would soon be replaced by something far more ominous. At exactly 11:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, the sky changed forever. Commander Zixtal of the Kethvar Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Void Reaper, watching Earth's blue marble spin slowly beneath him. His 4 eyes studied the planet with the cold calculation of a predator sizing up its prey. This would be conquest number 848 for the Kethvar Empire, and like the 847 worlds before it, Earth would fall within 72 hours. The aliens had perfected their technique over millennia. No dramatic announcements, no demands for surrender, no theatrical displays of power. The Kethvar had learned that fear made species unpredictable, and unpredictability led to complications. Instead, they used what they called the silent harvest. Across Earth's major population centers, massive ships materialized from their cloaking fields. New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, Lagos, Sydney. Every major city found itself suddenly shadowed by kilometer-long vessels that hung in the sky like dark clouds. The ships were beautiful in their alien design, smooth curves of metallic gray that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But the ships weren't the real weapon. As soon as they appeared, they began broadcasting neural dampening fields, invisible waves that washed over the planet like a gentle tide. Within minutes, billions of humans simply stopped what they were doing. They didn't panic, didn't scream, didn't run. They just stood still, their minds clouded by artificial calm, waiting for instructions that would never come from their own species. This was how the Kethvar conquered worlds, not through violence or destruction, but through the simple act of switching off their victims' will to resist. It was efficient, clean, and had never failed. Until now. Dr. Sarah Chen was deep in the Antarctic ice, 3 kilometers below the surface in a research station that few people even knew existed. She was studying brain patterns in extreme isolation when the dampening wave hit Earth. Her equipment registered the neural frequency, but something strange happened. Neither she nor her 3 colleagues felt any different. Sarah stared at her instruments in confusion. The reading showed a massive electromagnetic pulse designed to affect human brain chemistry, but her team remained completely unaffected. She tried to contact the surface, but all communication channels had gone dead. When she finally managed to patch through to a weather station 200 kilometers away, she heard something that chilled her to the bone. "This is Dr. Chen at Deep Ice Station. Please respond." A flat, emotionless voice answered. "We are fine. Everything is normal. Do not worry." Sarah knew Dr. Patterson at that station. He was never calm, never spoke in monotone, and certainly never told people not to worry. Something was terribly wrong. Meanwhile, in a small garage in rural Montana, Marcus Webb was elbow-deep in the engine of a 1987 pickup truck when the sky darkened. The former military engineer looked up through the garage's open door and saw something that made his blood run cold, a massive alien ship hovering silently over the distant city of Billings. Marcus had served 2 tours in Afghanistan before an IED took most of his left leg and ended his military career. He'd seen enough combat to know a threat when he saw one. He grabbed his emergency radio and started scanning frequencies, trying to make sense of what was happening. What he heard was nothing. Radio stations had gone silent. Military channels were dead. Even the emergency broadcast system had stopped functioning. But Marcus was nothing if not resourceful. He rigged an amplifier to his radio and started broadcasting on every frequency he could find. This is Marcus Webb in Montana. If anyone can hear this, something's wrong. There are alien ships over the cities, and people aren't responding normally. If you're out there, if you're still thinking clearly, we need to band together. 3,000 miles away in Lagos, Nigeria, Kala Okafor was in her apartment working on communication satellites when the ships appeared. As a senior engineer for a major telecommunications company, she understood signal processing better than most. When her equipment started picking up the neural dampening frequency, she immediately recognized it for what it was: a weapon. Kala's apartment was in an old building with thick concrete walls and metal reinforcement that naturally shielded against electromagnetic radiation. She watched in horror as people in the streets below simply stopped moving, standing like statues in the middle of their daily routines. She quickly modified her satellite equipment to scan for other unaffected areas. What she found gave her hope. Scattered pockets of people around the world were still broadcasting, still thinking, still human. She began coordinating with them, creating a network of resistance that the aliens had never encountered before. Commander Zixtal expected his conquest to proceed according to schedule. The neural dampening fields had been deployed successfully, and orbital scans showed that 97.3% of the human population was now under passive control. This was actually a better success rate than most worlds achieved. By all calculations, Earth should have been ready for the harvest phase. But then the reports started coming in. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting unusual energy signatures from multiple locations. Small groups of humans appear to be active." Zixtal's four eyes narrowed. "Define active." "They're moving with purpose, manipulating technology, and broadcasting signals. Our neural dampening fields appear to have no effect on them." This was unprecedented. In 847 previous conquests, the silent harvest had achieved at least 99.8% effectiveness. Small pockets of resistance were impossible. The neural dampening fields were planet-wide and affected all known neural architectures. "Increase field intensity by 40%, Zixtal ordered. "Sir, we're already at maximum safe levels. Any higher, and we risk permanent brain damage to the controlled population." Zixtal considered this. Damaged goods were worthless to the Kethvar Empire. Their entire economy was built on harvesting the mental capabilities of conquered species. Dead or brain-damaged humans wouldn't serve their purpose. Maintain current levels. Deploy scout teams to investigate the anomalous areas. Back on Earth, the scattered resistance was learning fast. Sarah Chen used her neuroscience background to analyze the alien signal and discovered something crucial. The dampening field worked by suppressing specific brainwave patterns associated with independent thought and emotional response. But people in electromagnetically shielded environments, or those with certain rare brain chemistry variants, could resist the effect. Marcus Webb, with his engineering background, figured out something even more important. The alien ships weren't just broadcasting. They were also receiving. Their neural dampening systems were constantly adjusting based on feedback from the human population. And if they were receiving signals, that meant their systems might be vulnerable to interference. Kala Okafor became the link that connected these discoveries. Using her modified satellite equipment, she created a communication network that allowed the scattered resistance groups to share information instantly. Within hours of the invasion, humans were doing something the Kethvar had never seen before. They were learning about their enemy in real time and adapting their response. The first alien scout team landed in the Montana countryside, expecting to find a few confused humans who could be easily subdued. Instead, they found Marcus Webb and a dozen local farmers who had been preparing for this exact scenario for the past 6 hours. Marcus had used his military training to set up a classic ambush. The aliens' personal shields were designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles, but they weren't prepared for a rancher's combined harvester modified with steel spikes and driven by someone who had nothing left to lose. The aliens also hadn't expected humans to be smart enough to use their own technology against them. When the scout team tried to activate their neural dampeners at close range, they found that the humans had built crude but effective jamming devices using car batteries, copper wire, and pure determination. The skirmish lasted only minutes, but its impact was enormous. For the first time in Kethvar history, a scout team failed to return from a harvest operation. More importantly, the humans had captured alien equipment and were already figuring out how it worked. Sarah Chen received Marcus's signal just as her team was making a breakthrough of their own. Using the alien technology they'd intercepted, she discovered that the neural dampening field could be reversed, turned from a weapon of suppression into a tool of liberation. Kala, she broadcast to Nigeria. We can wake them up. The people under their control. We can bring them back. How? Kala's voice crackled through the jury-rigged communication system. We reverse the polarity of their own signal. Use their network against them. But we need to coordinate perfectly. If we try it in one location, they'll adapt and prevent it from working anywhere else. Around the world, the resistance was growing. In the Australian outback, Aboriginal elders who had never lost touch with their land were organizing their communities. In the Amazon rainforest, indigenous tribes were using ancient knowledge combined with modern technology to fight back. In the frozen wastes of Siberia, researchers at remote stations were turning their equipment into weapons of liberation. Commander Zixtel stared at his tactical display in growing disbelief. Red warning indicators were appearing across the planet as his forces encountered resistance they had never seen before. These humans weren't just fighting back. They were learning, adapting, and teaching each other at an impossible rate. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're intercepting human transmissions. They appear to be sharing tactical information across the entire planet in real time. That's impossible, Zixtel snarled. We've crippled their communication infrastructure. Not all of it, sir. They're using improvised methods, satellite networks, amateur radio, even reflected signals off our own ships. Zixtel felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of conquest. Doubt. These humans were unlike any species the Kethvar had encountered. Most civilizations either submitted to the neural dampening or tried to fight it with brute force. But humanity was doing something different. They were treating the invasion like a puzzle to be solved, a challenge to be overcome through intelligence and cooperation. As the first day of invasion drew to a close, the situation on Earth was unlike anything in Kethvar records. Instead of a pacified population waiting for harvest, they faced a planet full of humans who were more dangerous now than they had been before the invasion began. In hidden locations around the world, the resistance was preparing for something unprecedented. Using alien technology, human ingenuity, and the kind of desperate determination that only came from fighting for survival, they were about to attempt something that would change the course of the galaxy. The silent harvest was about to become anything but silent. Part 2. The Human Factor. 48 hours after the first alien ships appeared, Commander Zixtel stood in his command center facing a situation that should have been impossible. According to every model, every simulation, every precedent in Kethvar history, Earth should have been fully pacified by now. Instead, his tactical display showed something that made his 4 eyes burn with frustration. The resistance was growing. What had started as scattered pockets of unaffected humans had become a coordinated global network. Worse, they were actively liberating the humans under neural control, turning his own weapons against him. Status report, he demanded. His tactical officer's voice carried an edge of uncertainty that Zixtel had never heard before. Sir, we've lost contact with 17 scout teams. The humans have somehow weaponized our neural dampening technology. They're using it to wake up the controlled population. How many are free? Current estimates suggest 340 million and climbing exponentially. Zixtel's claws scraped against the metal of his command console. In less than 2 days, these primitive humans had figured out technology that had taken the Kethvar centuries to develop. It was beyond unprecedented. It was impossible. On Earth, the impossible was becoming routine. Dr. Sarah Chen had turned her Antarctic research station into the coordination center for the global resistance. Her underground facility was naturally shielded from alien interference, making it the perfect location to plan humanity's counterattack. Surrounding her were jury-rigged computers, modified alien devices, and communication equipment that looked like it had been assembled by a determined child with access to an electronics store. "Marcus, what's your status in Montana?" She spoke into her microphone. Marcus Webb's voice came through clearly despite the fact that he was using a transmitter built from spare truck parts and captured alien technology. "We've liberated 3 small towns, and we're moving on Billings. The alien tech is easier to reverse engineer than I expected. It's almost like they never planned for anyone to fight back." "That's exactly right." Kayla O'Keefe's voice joined the conversation from Lagos. "I've been analyzing their communication patterns. The Kethvar have conquered hundreds of worlds, but they've never faced coordinated resistance. Their entire strategy is built around the assumption that neural dampening makes resistance impossible." Sarah pulled up a global map on her screen, showing liberation zones spreading across every continent. "They're learning, though. Each time we free a population center, they adapt their dampening fields to compensate." "Then we adapt faster," Marcus replied. "I got good news on that front. Remember that alien scout ship we took down yesterday? We've got it working." The implications of Marcus's words hit everyone on the channel simultaneously. Sarah spoke first. "You have a functional alien spacecraft." "Better than that. We have a functional alien spacecraft with a neural dampening transmitter powerful enough to affect an entire city, and I've figured out how to make it work in reverse." In the Amazon rainforest, Dr. Elena Vasquez listened to the conversation while making her own preparations. She had been studying indigenous knowledge systems when the invasion began, and she discovered something the aliens hadn't expected. Some human cultures had developed natural resistance to mental manipulation through generations of spiritual practice and meditation. "The elders here say something interesting," Elena broadcast to the network. "They call the alien signal the voice that makes you forget yourself. But they also say the Earth itself is fighting back." This wasn't mystical thinking. Elena had the scientific background to understand what the indigenous people were observing. The planet's magnetic field was interacting with the alien technology in ways the invaders hadn't anticipated. In certain locations, particularly those with strong geological activity, the neural dampening fields were naturally weakened. "I'm seeing the same thing in Iceland," reported Dr. Jorn Eriksson from a geothermal research station. "The volcanic activity here is creating electromagnetic anomalies that disrupt their control signals. We've got the entire island free, and we're using the geothermal plants to power massive signal boosters." Commander Zixtol reviewed these reports with growing alarm. Not only were the humans liberating their own kind, but they were using their planet's natural characteristics as weapons. No other species had ever demonstrated such comprehensive adaptation to invasion conditions. "Sir," his science officer reported, "we're detecting unusual coordinated activity across multiple human population centers. They appear to be planning something." "What kind of activity?" "Unknown, sir, but it involves their modified versions of our own technology." At that moment across Earth, the human resistance was preparing to attempt something that had never been tried in galactic history. Using captured alien technology, reverse-engineered neural dampening systems, and a communication network that spanned the globe, they were going to try to liberate an entire planet simultaneously. Sarah Chen's voice carried across the resistance network with calm authority. "This is our one chance. If we hit them everywhere at once, they won't be able to adapt fast enough to stop us. Everyone ready?" From Montana, Marcus Webb reported in. "Western U.S. sector ready. We've got modified alien tech deployed in 16 locations." From Nigeria, Kela Okafor confirmed her region. "African network is online. We're coordinating with resistance cells in 32 countries." From Brazil, Elena Vasquez spoke for South America. "Amazon basin is ready. Indigenous communities are providing natural amplification through their sacred sites." From Iceland, Jorn Eriksson represented the European effort. "Nordic grid is powered up. We're channeling geothermal energy through captured alien transmitters." Similar reports came in from Australia. where outback communities had turned mining equipment into planet-wide broadcasting systems, from Antarctica, where research stations were using ice-penetrating radar to boost signals, from the Himalayas, where mountain communities were using altitude and atmospheric conditions to their advantage. What the aliens saw on their sensors was terrifying. A planet-wide network of modified alien technology, powered by human ingenuity and operated by a species that refused to give up. Execute Operation Awakening, Sarah commanded. Across Earth, modified alien transmitters came online simultaneously. Instead of the oppressive neural dampening fields the HFY had used to control humanity, waves of liberation swept across the planet. The signal was perfectly tuned to reverse the effects of alien mind control, and it was broadcast with such power and coordination that even the HFY's adaptive systems couldn't compensate fast enough. In New York, millions of people suddenly looked up at the alien ships with clear eyes for the first time in 2 days. In London, crowds that had been standing motionless in the streets began to move with purpose. In Tokyo, the population that had been docilely waiting for harvest suddenly became an army of angry humans who knew exactly who had tried to steal their minds. Commander Zixtal watched his control displays turn from green to red as city after city slipped from HFY control. "How is this possible?" he demanded. His science officer's voice shook with disbelief. "Sir, they've coordinated a planet-wide liberation signal. They're using our own technology, but they've improved it. The modifications they've made they're actually superior to our original designs. That's impossible. We've been developing this technology for millennia." "Sir, I think that's the problem. We've been using the same approach for so long that we never considered alternatives. These humans have been working on the problem for less than 48 hours, but they're approaching it from angles we never imagined. On Earth, the liberation wasn't just technical, it was personal." Marcus Webb stood in the main square of Billings, Montana, watching as thousands of people came back to themselves. An elderly woman who had been standing motionless for 2 days suddenly looked around in confusion, then anger, then determination. "What did they do to us?" she asked. "They tried to make us forget who we are," Marcus replied. "But they failed." The woman, who Marcus learned was a retired schoolteacher named Dorothy, looked up at the alien ship hovering over their city. "So what do we do now?" Marcus smiled, hefting a modified alien weapon that his team had cobbled together from spare parts and determination. "Now we show them what happens when you try to harvest humanity." The counterattack began immediately. Humans didn't just resist. They actively hunted the alien forces, using captured technology, improvised weapons, and tactics that no alien database had ever cataloged. They turned Earth into a nightmare for the HFY. In Australia, Aboriginal communities used their knowledge of the land to stage ambushes that appeared to come from the Earth itself. In the Amazon, indigenous warriors combined ancient hunting techniques with alien energy weapons. In the Arctic, Inuit hunters used the harsh environment to trap alien patrols in situations their technology couldn't handle. But the most devastating attack came from an unexpected source: human creativity applied to alien technology. Sarah Chen had been studying the neural dampening systems when she made a discovery that changed everything. The aliens don't just use this technology to control other species, she announced to the Resistance Network. They use it to suppress their own emotions and independent thought. It's how they maintain their rigid social hierarchy. The implications were staggering. Marcus Webb was the first to understand. "You're saying we can use their own neural dampening technology against them?" "Exactly. But we need to modify it to affect their brain chemistry instead of ours." Within hours, human engineers around the world were reverse engineering alien neural dampening devices to target alien physiology. The results were devastating to the HFY forces. Alien soldiers who had never experienced doubt suddenly found themselves questioning their orders. Officers who had never felt fear were paralyzed by the unfamiliar emotion. Commander Zixtal felt the effects himself when a modified signal reached his flagship. For the first time in his adult life, He experienced something the Kethvar had bred out of themselves centuries ago: uncertainty. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "ground forces are requesting immediate evacuation. They report that the neural disruption is making it impossible to function." Zixtel struggled with feelings he didn't understand. Was this fear? Doubt? He had no experience with such emotions, no training for how to handle them. All forces fall back to the ships. But the humans weren't finished. They had learned something else from the alien technology: how to track Kethvar ships even when cloaked. As the alien forces tried to retreat, they found themselves under attack from weapons that shouldn't have existed and tactics that made no sense. The final blow came when Sarah Chen's team successfully hacked into the Kethvar communication network. Instead of trying to damage their systems, they did something far more devastating. They broadcast the concept of individual freedom directly into the minds of every Kethvar in the fleet. For a species that had eliminated free will from their society, the sudden introduction of independent thought was catastrophic. Soldiers began disobeying orders. Officers questioned their commanders. Even the ship's AI systems, which were based on Kethvar neural patterns, began to malfunction. Commander Zixtal made a decision that would have been impossible for him just days earlier. He chose to retreat. "All ships, prepare for immediate departure. We're abandoning this harvest." "Sir," his communications officer protested, "the High Command will demand an explanation." "Tell them," Zixtal said, still struggling with the unfamiliar concepts of doubt and humility, "that we have encountered a species that becomes more dangerous when threatened. Tell them that humanity cannot be harvested." As the alien ships departed Earth's atmosphere, they left behind something that had never happened before in galactic history: a successfully defended world. But more than that, they left behind a species that had learned how to fight back, and more importantly, how to help others fight back. Within months, Earth's liberation techniques were being broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for generations suddenly found themselves free. The Kethvar Empire, which had conquered 847 worlds through neural suppression, found itself facing rebellions on hundreds of planets simultaneously. The humans had done more than defend their own world. They had sparked a galactic revolution. Sarah Chen stood in her Antarctic research station, now the unofficial headquarters of the Galactic Liberation Network, reading reports from freed worlds across the galaxy. Each message was different, but they all carried the same theme: hope. Message from the Zephyrian system. Kala reported from her communications center in Lagos. "They've successfully liberated 3 planets using our neural reversal techniques." The crystalline entities in the Andromeda spiral are reporting similar success, Marcus added from his new position as Earth's military coordinator. "They're calling the liberation signal the human frequency." Sarah smiled as she looked out at the stars through her research station's window. The aliens had come to Earth expecting an easy harvest, but they had encountered something they'd never seen before: a species that got stronger when challenged, smarter when threatened, and more united when attacked. They had expected to find victims. Instead, they had awakened teachers. The galaxy would never be the same.